everybody. My name is Alan Blumkin. I'm filling in for Ralph Tyko tonight on the Comfortably Zone Radio Network. And it's the 3 Baseball Mishuganas, except tonight it's the 4 Baseball Mishuganas. And my guests tonight are regular on this program, Peter Golenbach, my good friend and co-host of the Thursday afternoon Old Time Baseball podcast, David Nemec, and my good friend Marc Weiss. Welcome, everybody.
Hey, thanks so much.
Thank you, Al.
Okay. The topic tonight is going to be the Hall of Fame and essentially who you vote for if you had a ballot for this coming election. And
I actually had a ballot. I had
a ballot
with the internet baseball writers of America. I actually had a ballot. So I did my voting. So I know who I voted for and I know who else I would vote for. So I do know that.
Can you reveal that, sir?
I can. Of course, I have to remember exactly who was on the ballot. I voted for about 8 people. And here sitting in front of me, I have a list of about 12. So whether they were on this ballot or should be on the ballot, I'm not sure. But my obviously the first 2 people, beside Gil Hodges, who ought to be on the ballot are Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens.
Thank you.
Oh, boy. Oh, we're going to get into it tonight.
They're on my list of 6.
Well, let's start with the rationale behind it all. We just put into the Baseball Hall of Fame a fellow by the name of Bud Selig,
who should never have been in the Hall of Fame. That was my prediction.
Every commissioner who was ever a commissioner gets into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Not quite.
If Bowie Kuhn can get into the Baseball Hall of Fame, Bud Selig can get into the Hall of Fame.
You
way ahead of
Selig. Tabati and Vincent are not in because they weren't around long enough.
That's right, and neither was the general. He wasn't around. He wasn't around long enough either. Yeah. But if Bowie Kuhn, after 15, 20 years of never having made a right decision, of having been snookered by Marvin Miller for all those years, can get into the Hall of Fame, sure as shooting Bud Selig can. I mean, Bud Selig was responsible primarily for the financial health of Major League Baseball. He made a hell of a lot of owners a hell of a lot of money, and at the same time, of course, made players a lot of money as well. Say what you want about it.
This was a trend on Facebook. One of the things I put down was they lowered the bar with Bowie Kuhn. And maybe
there's no bar. I mean, if you can put Kennesaw Mountain Landis into the Hall of Fame after he spent his entire career keeping black players out of baseball, when a lot of people actually wanted black players into baseball.
But a lot of owners.
That's right. Well, the owners certainly didn't want them. And if you can put Ford Frick into the Hall of Fame, what the hell did he do, for crying out loud? So it's
a league matter.
It's just by definition, if you're a commissioner and you're around long enough, you get into the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, who were the two American League presidents? Will Harridge.
Yeah.
But
right?
Yeah.
Isn't he in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Will Harridge.
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell did Will Harridge ever do?
Nothing.
So, and who was in the National League at the time? Was it
Warren Giles and Frick before
Warren Giles? Yes. Isn't Warren Giles in the Hall of Fame?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. So let's go back to my argument. And my argument is this, is that starting when the steroids began in the early 1990s is when they really started heating up. In 1994, let me say, there was a baseball strike. Not only was it a long strike, but they canceled the World Series, which was, in my lifetime, one of the very worst things that they ever did in Major League Baseball. It was inexcusable. But the owners were determined that they were going to win this, and they locked the players out. I mean, when people talk about a strike, it was not a strike. It was a lockout. At any rate, after the lockout was finally ended and people went back to work, a certain percentage of baseball fans vowed they would never come back and watch baseball again. I mean, that lockout was a trap.
And most of them probably lived in Montreal.
Well, they lived a lot of places. But what happened was this, is in 1996, you had Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa hitting home runs out of the park.
98.
Barry Bonds
Yeah, that was
also.
a couple years later.
These guys were hitting home runs, and I don't know about you, but I couldn't wait to watch these guys play baseball on television.
I couldn't wait to turn the TV when they played.
And when McGwire set the record, and he was there in St. Louis with Roger Maris, his wife and kids, and all of that.
And he held the Maris bat, and he made that speech. It was heartwarming.
Oh, it was wonderful. It was
Hollywood
wonderful.
It was a Hollywood moment.
And at the same time, all of these major league owners were starting to put a hell of a lot of money in their pockets because these guys were making them rich. Now, did they know that their ball players were on steroids? Did the managers know? Did the coaches know? Did the owners know? I suspect that they did. Did they care? I am convinced that they didn't. Now, why didn't they? For the same reason. For the same reason, nobody cares that the college football players, people take tests for them, that there are no standards for their academics, that they're really professional athletes. I mean, nobody cares because everybody in college sports is making so much money, and in baseball, professional baseball with the steroid players, everybody was making a small fortune. Okay. Having said that, it seems to me that if all these owners can make so much money, and if you can put Bud Selig, who knew about all these steroid players, into the Hall of Fame, then by definition, those ball players who were using steroids, and most of them were not convicted of using steroids, they were just, the assumption was that's what they were doing. I mean, Barry Bonds
weren't? You believe any of them weren't?
I don't care.
Name one player you name that has been to being a steroid user who you think didn't do it. Name one.
I'm convinced I can't, because I'm convinced that 96% of all baseball players were taking some sort of
no, I don't think it's nearly that high.
Well,
I wouldn't even think it was 50%.
I don't know. If you're a ball player, and you're seeing these other guys taking it, and you're saying to yourself, if I don't take it, then I'm going to be at a real disadvantage. Wouldn't you take it?
There were a lot who went that way. You're right, but there were a lot who I think who stayed clean, and those guys.
I think as the decade wore on, more and more players started doing it.
That's right.
I was doing some research a few years ago, and I just looked at it again today for the show, and I said to myself, can I really figure out when Clemens and Bonds switched over to start doing steroids? And I said, you know what? I definitely can. And I found out for Clemens it was real easy because he had 2 cruddy years up in Boston, and then all of a sudden he shows up in Toronto, and the guy who's the steroid pusher is the trainer in Toronto, and he has 2 20-win seasons. And exactly, he had 2 20-win seasons. He wins 2 Cy Young awards, and he resurrects his career. So I could trace it back to that point for him. For Bonds, I could trace it to the point where he watched the 2 guys playing home run derby in 1998, and he had a bad year in 99 where he was hitting like in the 260s, played 100 games, and after that, he was like all in, and he had those plus 35 years that, looked like Babe Ruth's years when he was in his 20s. So I think I could trace it for those 2 guys, and then I looked at their stats prior to when I could trace it to them, and they were first ballot Hall of Famers in my book before then, and that's why I would vote for those guys.
Sure. Well, I did a book with Lenny Dykstra, as you know.
Those are the first Hall of Famers too, until he started gambling on baseball. Why didn't you put him in?
Are you talking about Rose?
I didn't have a vote.
Rose, if you're gonna give Bonds and Cummins a pass,
I would put Rose in as a player.
The Hall of Fame.
Rosen as a player, and I would make sure that he had signed an agreement that he can't make any money working in Major League Baseball.
You got to have Barry Bonds and Clemens sign an agreement that they didn't cheat by using steroids for the latter part of their careers and help.
I would argue that they were never proved to have taken it.
It wasn't against the rules.
Let me tell you this. Let me tell you this one story. As I was doing this book with Lenny Dykstra, and one of the stories he tells is that Barry Bonds comes to him because he saw that Lenny had beefed up something fierce after he had gone to the Phillies. He had to beef up because he had played a season prior to that, and by the end of September, he was so exhausted he was hitting about 190. So Lenny he's in Mississippi, and he goes to a doctor, and he finds out what you have to take in order to beef up. He comes to spring training the next year, and he is huge.
An Adonis.
Yes,
an Adonis. Okay, so Barry Bonds comes to him and says, "What are you doing?" And at first, Lenny doesn't tell him, but eventually, Lenny does. And that's how Bonds found out that Durabalin was the stuff that you had to take, and Barry started taking it as well. But, again, my point is, if you're going to put the guy who knew everybody was on steroids into the Hall of Fame, I would argue that you have to put the players in, too.
Well, that guy who you're talking about, Bud Selig, should never be in the Hall of Fame. He and Donald Fair, more than any other player, any of the players from that era, should never be in the Hall of Fame. They're the two, I think, who... Yeah, they're the two who really wrecked baseball.
I don't think Kennesaw Mountain Landis should be in the Hall of Fame either, quite frankly.
Well, you can make a good case for that, but he was an owner's man. Right. He did hold the game together. He got Major League Baseball to survive World War II with a lot of help, and his longevity, if nothing else, probably helped. It's hard to make a case against.
Well, I think his longevity had to do with the fact that he controlled everybody, and I think the owners were kind of afraid of him too, even though he was a little bit of an owner's man. He was kind of like the Hoover of baseball.
He had everybody.
When they initially approached him, Landis, they wanted to give him a 1-year deal. And Landis, who was a judge at the time, a federal judge, he said, "No, you give me a lifetime contract, and the second thing is when I make a decision, nobody can overrule me." And they were so afraid because of what had happened with the Black Sox scandal. They needed somebody with an iron hand, and they gave him what he wanted. And so he became a czar. He, in fact, became the word. And so if somebody wanted to do something that Landis didn't want to do, too bad. Landis had the final word always.
He did free twice. He freed farmhands. He freed a bunch of Cardinal farmhands once, and they freed a bunch of Tiger farmhands once.
Well, he was
freed
against
Tommy
the
Henry.
Farm system, yeah.
He did. He was against the farm system. He also did something else that was very strange. One of the pitchers, I think a Philadelphia pitcher, argued that Ty Cobb and Tris Speaker in 1927
Dutch Leonard. Yeah. Leonard was American League pitcher, a left-hander.
And so rather than condemn either of these two, incredible stars, he transferred them somehow, both of them, to the Philadelphia Athletics, where they were allowed to play one more year and finish out their careers. But that's a really weird moment.
It is. It's a very unfortunate moment because he threw a lot of guys out who probably shouldn't have been thrown out.
That's right.
And he did give Speaker and Cobb a pass.
He did.
Didn't he also throw out guys who went to the Mexican League or something for more money?
No, that wasn't.
That was Chandler.
Chandler,
who was 1946.
Chandler banned them, but he couldn't make it stick because when guys like Danny Gardella took him to court, he had to let back into organized baseball.
But I'll tell you what they did do to those guys. They would not let them into the players' union, and as a result, they could not get pensions. Back in 2001, I wrote a full-page article in the New York Times about these guys. I mean, some of them were fabulous players. And because they had played in Mexico in 46, they were living in trailer homes and they were dead broke. And
what about Sal Magli? He got a pension.
I'm just telling you. I am telling you what happened. I don't know. I can't tell you about individuals, but anybody who played in Mexico in 46 didn't get a pension. If Magli was in Mexico in 46, he didn't get a pension. I don't care. They wouldn't give these people pensions. But the Negro Leaguers were getting $10,000 a year, and so Major League Baseball agreed to give these guys $10,000 a year, the same as the Negro League players. But again, this was not Kennesaw Mountain Landers. This was all happening under Chandler. Yeah.
Well, the ones who broke the strike in '95, the replacements who stuck around as players, like pitcher Rick Reed. They were not allowed to join the union either. You know, once the labor situation was ended in the beginning of '95.
That's interesting, but it's understandable.
Yeah.
Certainly is. That's understandable.
But that makes more sense, because if you think about it, those guys were hurting the union cause. I don't see the guys going to the Mexican League hurting the union cause. If anything, they're pushing the cause, because then baseball has to be more competitive.
Well, this was something declared by Chandler. This was not anything declared by the players. This was something.
Well, how did he have the right to keep them out of the players' union, though?
No, but the union at the time was a sop from the owners. It really didn't amount to a hill of beans.
It was a sweetheart union.
Yes, it was a sweetheart union that was totally controlled by ownership. I mean, this is one of the things that Marvin Miller had to fight against when he came in, because everybody was saying, "Oh, we have a union. Hey, we're going to do what's right by our players." And Marvin looked at this thing and went, "Are you people out of your mind?"
Now, there's a guy who should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, totally. We've beaten that one up.
We have beaten that up. We have definitely beaten them up. But there's
a man who'll be kept out of the Hall of Fame by the owners forever if they have their say, because he changed baseball and took all the control away from those guys.
No question about it. No question about it. But on some level, Marvin is smiling down on the fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame.
Marilyn, I never saw Marvin smile whenever the Hall of Fame was.
That's true. Marvin didn't smile very much, but he was about the smartest person I ever knew.
He was.
Let's revise that to say he'd have a wry grin.
Yes, he did have a wry grin. I loved the guy. I just loved him to death. I thought he was marvelous. And I'll tell you, Marvin's stance on steroids is that their use should not have been investigated. He didn't want the steroid use investigated by anybody. He thought it was none of anybody's business, because he didn't want anything.
Did he say steroids were no worse than smoking cigarettes, and we don't ban that in baseball? So why are we talking about this?
There was a point where he did say that. Yes.
Does smoking cigarettes make you a better ball player?
Well, there are a lot of
According to Keith Hernandez, it made him concentrate more.
That's right. Well, it's funny because they're now starting to ban smokeless tobacco. We're changing the subject a little bit, but here I'm in St. Petersburg where we have the Trop, and they've now passed a law that there shall be no smokeless tobacco chewed inside Tropicana's field. And poor Tom Foley, who is our bench coach, he's been chewing tobacco his entire life.
Didn't they write that into the CBA?
What's that?
The rookies can't. Anybody who comes in as a rookie starting this season can't chew tobacco anymore. I think they wrote that
that's right.
New CBA.
Yeah. The Major League Baseball is starting to push against smokeless tobacco now, which makes a certain amount of sense. I know when I was coaching JV high school baseball, I told the kids, you come with that smokeless tobacco and I'm going to take it. And I did. I took it. The idea that 14, 15, 16-year-old kids were had a chaw of tobacco in their mouth. I just did not want them getting skin cancer.
That's what killed Tony Gwynn.
Well, it killed Tony Gwynn.
That's killed all sorts of people.
How
many guys had jaw cancer and stuff like that?
Jaw cancer, right?
Hey.
I remember one ball had Bill Tuttle. That's who it was.
Bill Tuttle.
Yes, his entire face was wiped out.
Exactly.
Every one of his baseball cards, and he had like a golf ball in his mouth.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. But as he got older, as he got into his 60s, the cancer attacked his face, and they had to cut, most of his face away.
Oh.
Terrible what happened to him.
Talk about something that's so intrinsic within the culture of a game for so many years. It's just so tough for them to do, to crack down and push it out. They tried a lot of things, and I guess banning it is the only way to do it.
It is the only way to do it. It is. It is. And quite frankly, they should be starting in the high schools, and they're not. At least they're not that I know of. But they should be taking it away in the high schools and in the colleges. I'll bet you it's not banned in college ball.
I agree. It wasn't when I played it. It was banned on my team. I can't say it was banned throughout the Big Ten, but it was banned at Ohio State.
Okay, well, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was. And I'm looking back, and I don't remember anybody in any of the games I played in college, or let alone high school. I don't remember anybody certainly from high school, but I don't remember anybody in college chewing it either. So I don't know when these. I know one guy who dropped out and signed with the Phillies, and the Phillies chain did start chewing when he came back and worked out with us in the off season. But I don't remember anybody that I played with or against who actually chewed tobacco in college. This goes back a few years.
I remember.
So you see the College World Series now, you don't really see anybody. You don't really see any obvious chewers. Maybe there are guys who.
I remember with the Yankees, I was in the dugout one time, and I was standing with a guy who looked like Colonel Sanders. He had this white suit, and he had that bolo tie, and he looked like Colonel Sanders, but he wasn't. And I'm standing there, and Thurman Munson is standing with us, and as this guy is talking, Munson is chewing tobacco and spitting the tobacco juice on this guy's pants. And Dykstra smoked, chewing tobacco, chewing tobacco his whole career.
I remember all the baseball cards of Nellie Fox. And
Hank Bauer. Hank Bauer chewed it?
Yeah. Vic Raschi. Because Vic Raschi
really chewed it?
He used to spit on these sports writers' shoes so they would leave him alone.
That's right. That's right. Now, a lot of these guys, what they started to do, they started mixing the chewing tobacco with bubble gum. So it was less chewing tobacco, and it sort of held together a little bit more, but they still chewed it. A lot of people did.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to your list, who else do you have, Peter?
Who do I have on my list? Well, I've got the next guy I would argue should be in the Hall of Fame is Manny Ramirez.
Oh God, no.
Hey.
These are people. These are people who changed the game. These are people who were dominant.
How did he change the game? How did he change the game for the better? What did he ever do?
Oh, no, forget the better. The better is not an issue.
He changed the game.
Forget the better. He hit a hell of a lot of home runs. He drove an awful lot of runs. He had a high batting average. He was very, very, very productive. He would come into the Trop. He would come into the Trop and beat our brains out. This guy.
A horrible fielder, a terrible base runner.
You want Manny on your team or you don't?
I don't.
No,
don't.
I did.
Let me ask you a question. 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, runner on third. You want Manny on your team batting?
I wanted Manny on my team. Yes, I did.
I say yes. Even
absolutely, I want Manny. I want those
numbers. He's a clutch ball player.
He was fantastic. Fantastic. All right. So who are some of the others?
How about Tim Raines?
Tim Raines is the second best leadoff hitter
ever
in the history of the game of baseball.
Good. I agree.
Ricky was number one. Ricky was my favorite, just one of my favorites forever. But Raines was wonderful. Raines' problem is that he played in Montreal and nobody watched him do it. But Raines
and he played in the same era as Ricky.
Well, one was in the National League, one was in the American League. Ricky also played on the Yankees. Once you come to the Yankees, you get a lot more notice.
Well, Raines got there too, but too late.
Raines was wonderful, and I don't know about you fellas, but I certainly would vote for Tim Raines.
I'd vote for him in a heartbeat. As a matter of fact, he's got the best stealing percentage of anyone with 400-plus stolen bases, better than Ricky's.
Wow, that's fabulous. All right, I'm going to mention a guy that's going to cause an argument for the next 15 minutes, which is fantastic because
good for the rating.
This guy is an unbelievable asshole. he is, whatever comes out of his mouth. The only other guy I could think of was like this was Steve Carlton. Steve Carlton would talk about these white supremacists and
John Birch.
We better build a bomb shelter because they're coming after our guns and the rest of the stuff. There was another guy who, every time he opened his mouth, caused just huge howls of protest, and that's Curt Schilling.
Oh, God, no.
But the thing about Curt Schilling, you want a guy who goes out there prepared. You want a guy who goes out there and is one tough customer. You want a guy who will win postseason games. That's your guy. And I do believe that Curt Schilling, despite his political views, which are abhorrent, but unfortunately which somehow seem to be the views of the country right now, belong in the Hall of Fame.
Start arguing, gentlemen.
Well,
better than Louis Pierce, or better than Louis Tiant, or better than Lou Burdette? All of whom have similar records.
Better than all of them. Better than all of them. I want this guy on my team.
How about I throw a stat line?
He was in 3 World Series, 2001 with Arizona. He took Arizona to the top. He was with the Red Sox 2004, 2007. Wherever he went, they won, and it wasn't an accident.
He was actually Lenny Dykstra's teammate on the '93 Phillies too.
Absolutely, he was. Absolutely, he was. That's right.
How about I throw out a stat line for you guys? In the postseason, for over 5 years and 12 series, Schilling was 11-2 with a 2.23 ERA.
Yeah, beat that.
Postseason. That's pretty darn impressive.
So I don't think there's anybody, well, maybe Whitey Ford, but there aren't too many people who are better. Not too many people who are better.
Postseason now is a lot different from what it was when there was no LCS.
All right.
No LCS.
All right, Alan, I'll just give you World Series then. 4-1, 2.06.
Yeah.
In 48 innings. Not shabby either.
Not shabby. No. I'll give you another pitcher who I think should be in the Hall of Fame. Baltimore Orioles starter by the name of Mike Mussina.
I'm disagreeing.
Okay, go to it.
Well, I mean, I admire the way he finished up his career with his only 20-win season and backed away from the game at the age of 40. But I always felt like he was the guy who wanted to be the number 2 guy and not the number 1 guy in any staff he was on. And I don't see those postseason moments for him. I just don't. And he didn't get the 300. That's my argument. Maybe it's weak.
2 or 3 years he would have gotten it, and it would have been automatic. But one of the things about Mussina, and you can look this up, he had seasons where he won everything from 11 to 20, 11, 12, 13, all the way up to 20. It's unique. I mean, I was looking at his numbers a while back, and I found this. But he isn't, to me, like Jim Carter, Tommy John. One of those times.
Yeah. And quite frankly, both
I would vote for those two.
Neither of those guys are in the Hall of Fame and should be.
But Blyleven is in.
Blyleven should be.
Yeah.
These are pitchers you can count on.
I like Jack Morris.
I like Jack Morris too. I like Jack Morris too, without a doubt.
That was a clutch big game pitcher.
Oh, the biggest, and still the most glaring omission. There are 2 glaring omissions. One of them is Gil Hodges.
Yes.
And the other glaring omission, Minnie Minoso, exactly.
Why Hodges?
Minnie Minoso.
Hodges was never the best player on his team. He was never the best first baseman in baseball. He had a good career, solid career. But the only thing that attracts me to Gil Hodges is that he won the World Series with the Mets. That's his number one.
If you don't count Musial, he had the best black ink of any first baseman who played in the 50s.
Not only that,
and he was a Gold Glove first baseman. Unlike Musial.
The one who came close to him with black ink was Kluszewski, and Kluszewski only had really four superior years from 53 to 56 before his back went out. But he helped the Dodgers win pennants in 47,
49, 52, 53, 55, 56.
And 59.
Worth a lot. And 59.
And wasn't he the MVP of the World Series in 59?
I don't remember.
He had an Oprah series.
Yeah,
that was in
53 when everybody went to church. But they loved him so much that everybody went to church to pray for him.
I'll give you a stat line on Gil Hodges. That's not a stat.
Okay.
He's the only Dodger player that never got booed by Dodger fans.
Yeah, wow.
Completely beloved.
Yeah, he had a bowling alley in Brooklyn. Lived in Brooklyn.
I used to bowl in that bowling alley.
I asked him to write about a year ago. I asked him to do the black ink on Hodges and compare them with some of the other first basemen of that era. The American League really had nobody during that period of time, and
they had Dick Power.
League, if you count Musial as a first baseman, he's the only one.
Which I don't.
Hodges was better than for the long stretch. He was better than any first baseman in the major leagues for 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, and they won a lot of.
I don't even count Musial as a first baseman. I count him as an all-time great who played first base toward, to kind of keep him out of the outfield. He wasn't a great fielder, whereas Gil Hodges won 3 Gold Gloves at first base, and the only reason he didn't win any more is the Gold Gloves weren't awarded until 57, which he was, already halfway through his career, maybe more.
More than half, yeah.
Yeah, actually, you're right, more than half, because he would have easily won a Gold Glove at first base for every one of those years within the 50s, if not 49 and maybe 48 as well.
I've got 2 more players on my list. Houston Astros, Jeff Bagwell. Yes. I think Bagwell is deserving. Part of it is that he played for Houston, so nobody noticed him very much. But he was a clutch hitter. He and that other little guy who's in the Hall of Fame,
Biggio.
Biggio. The two of them, I do believe belong in there together. That's my thinking.
Well, I have to say that
Killer Bees, right?
Fame, I have to go with Bagwell too, because Bagwell is kind of on the cusp for me as to whether he was one of the steroids boys or not. But I can't. There's absolutely no evidence.
He swears he didn't, and there's nobody else saying he did.
I know.
There's a statute of limitations, I think, about trying to convict someone in the court of public opinion. If it hasn't come out at this point, we got to put the guy in if he has the black numbers.
Well, and that's my argument at the beginning. If you can put Bud Selig in, you put these other guys in.
That's what's going to happen with Pudge Rodriguez.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, he's on my list. Pudge is on
my list.
He's definitely on my list. Didn't he catch the most?
One of the 5 best catchers of all time. One of the 5 best catchers of all time. Ivan Rodriguez, I would think.
I mean, we all agree that Mike Piazza is a Hall of Famer, right? And I think Pudge was his counterpart in the American League for all those years.
That's right.
And he was a better fielder, to be quite honest. I mean, Pudge was a great defensive catcher.
Yeah. He was.
He's totally on my list.
Yeah, my list too. There's one other guy.
Trevor Hoffman, maybe?
The greatest player ever to play for the Tampa Bay Rays. Jose Canseco.
Oh, you got it.
Is that supposed to be a provocative choice, Mr. Golenbach?
Look at his numbers, sports fans. Look at his numbers.
Well, there's no gray area on steroids.
Hey, no gray area on steroids, but if we're doing away with that as a reason not to put him in, then you got to put him in. He and McGuire, the Bash brothers, they were sensational, and people flocked to the ballpark to see him play. When he played that 1 year for the Rays and hit 33 home runs, and then he got hurt in September, which was just a crying shame. He could have had maybe 45, 50 home runs for the Rays that year. He was wonderful to watch. He was a reason to go to the ballpark. He really
had Wade Boggs down there.
But he wasn't Boggs. Boggs was not the charismatic character that Jose was. Jose was larger than life. Jose was huge.
Yes, he was larger than life.
Yes. Yes. I went to the Don Cesar to have lunch one day with a friend, and Jose was sitting at the next table with this incredibly beautiful-looking girl, and he's sitting there in his bathing suit. The guy looked like about 10 feet tall, looked like he weighed about 275 pounds. He was chiseled. It's no wonder he could hit the ball over the moon. The guy was huge. But I'll tell you what, when he put that uniform on, went to the ballpark, he was something to see. He was really terrific.
What about Vlad Guerrero?
Yes, he's on my list. Vlad. Vlad for sure. Wonderful hitter, wonderful ball player.
Vlad was like the best bad ball hitter I ever saw, and that's only because I'm not old enough to have seen Yogi Berra.
I saw Yogi a lot, yeah.
But would you say that Vlad was like in his class when it came to hitting bad pitches? Because you couldn't throw any ball by that guy.
Yeah. Yogi once said
Vlad was a moose.
Any ball that he could see was good.
Vlad was a wonderful player, yeah.
You guys don't go back as far as Ducky Medwick. Ducky Medwick was really...
Ducky Medwick doesn't go as far back as Ducky Medwick. Ducky Medwick, Jesus.
Yeah.
Mackerel.
He was great until he got beamed when he first came to the Dodgers.
Yeah, that was it. He never had the same plate discipline after that.
Right. Who were the three Dodgers on third base, meanwhile? Who were the three Dodgers?
Babe Herman. Yeah, that was talk about Jose Canseco. What about Babe Herman? There was a guy who really had some great years.
Jose Canseco made the greatest play that ever made ESPN. He's going back for the ball, and the ball bounces off his head and goes over the wall. It was they play it over and over and over again, and I'm always just amazed that such a play could happen. But again, I would say that Jose Canseco is one of those people, and who knows whether he'll ever get in, but he may, because
I don't think he'll ever get in.
I don't know. I think this whole steroid thing is beginning to weaken.
I think it's weakening, but I think that he's got so much extra baggage because of the fact that all the players of the era don't exactly like him either.
Yeah, but they're not
voting. That
voting.
could affect the voting. But does that affect the Veterans Committee, though? Aren't they part of that Veterans Committee?
And not only that, after we're long dead, the people who are going to be voting will have no idea, and they'll look at his numbers and they'll put him in.
I mean, isn't it the story that Gil Hodges is in the Hall of Fame today because Ted Williams wouldn't let Campy vote while he was sick, sending an absentee ballot?
That's absolutely true.
So, to me, if you're not in good with your contemporaries and they're on that Veterans Committee, they're going to keep you out, too.
It's possible.
Look at all the steps that Geringer and Frisch put in.
Ugh.
Oh, my. Rabbit Moranville. Did you ever look at Rabbit Moranville's batting average? Holy smokes.
He doesn't have a batting average.
It is fielding.
Jesse Haynes.
No, he was a wonderful fielder. He was a
wonderful fielder. So is Marty Marion, but he didn't get in.
And Marty should get in. Marty was
an MVP.
That's right. That's right. My favorites are still Tinkers to Evers to Chance because Franklin P. Adams wrote that fabulous poem. And for that alone, they ought to be in the Hall of Fame, and they are.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it. So,
my favorite is Jesse Haynes, who won 210 games in 18 seasons.
How about the pitcher who was married to Blossom Seeley? He pitched for the Giants, I think.
Rube Marquardt. He's 201.
Rube Marquardt. Look it up. How many wins does Rube Marquardt have?
201 and 177.
201 and 177.
Yeah.
What in the world is Rube Marquardt doing in the Hall of Fame except somebody must have had a thing for Blossom Seeley?
Jeez.
I know.
Well, you guys brought up a great name, which was Babe Herman. He's
Herman.
the only guy with 324 is not in the Hall of Fame.
Isn't that something?
How about Lefty O'Doul?
Lefty
O'Doul tick everybody off by going back home and playing in the Pacific Coast League?
No. You got a guy with a 342 career batting average who's not in the Hall of Fame.
Lefty O'Doul should be in the Hall of Fame for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons
I agree.
That he was very, very important in introducing baseball to the country of Japan. Lefty O'Doul. He was one of those guys. He was a very important ambassador.
Yeah, I know
ambassador to the game.
Yeah, in this case, I do agree with you. Even though he didn't have the playing credentials in the major league, he was
also a very important manager. He was a very important. He
was a big factor. Mostly getting really.
Another one that I can't understand unless he is in there because he gave money to them was Tom Yawkey. God, that's right.
Tom Yawkey was an extremely popular owner. People loved Tom Yawkey, even though he was the worst racist, as bad a racist as Kennesaw Mountain Land is. He had this plantation in South Carolina He did not want blacks on the team because he was convinced that if he put blacks on the Red Sox team, that white fans would no longer come to the games. All of that.
Just having losing teams in the 50s took care of that.
It took care of that. Absolutely took care of that.
They were the last team. They were the last team to integrate. It took what? Almost 12 years, 13 years from Jackie Robinson to Pumpsie Green?
Robinson, yeah.
Right, it was 1959. And the
1959, 12 years later it took.
Pumpsie Green.
And they put somebody on the bench who was going to sit on the bench, which was Pumpsie Green. That's exactly right. Pumpsie Green, when I went to interview him, he was the janitor at I think Berkeley High School. Lovely, lovely man. But that's what he was doing at the time.
I look at it this way. Yawkey's racist way of being punished himself because his product on the field suffered from the mid-50s all the way until the mid-60s. He had a 10-year period where they couldn't fill that seat.
That's true. The true story behind that, it had as much to do with Joe Cronin as it had to do with Yawkey. Yawkey loved Cronin. Cronin was with Washington, and Cronin was Clark Griffith's or Calvin Griffith's son-in-law.
Clark Griffith's son-in-law.
Son-in-law, and he sold him to the Red Sox for $250,000. Sold his son-in-law to the Red Sox for $250,000. Joe Cronin was as bad a racist, but probably even more of a racist. He was Irish, and he was more of a racist even than Yawkey was. And not only did he not want blacks on the team, but Joe Cronin didn't want Italians on the team either. When I interviewed Frank Malzone about his time with the Red Sox, he said that Yawkey kept in the minor leagues 2, 3, 4 years before bringing him up because he was Italian.
Well, it's funny because Cronin came from San Francisco, which had a heavy Italian population.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, he played with a lot of Italians out there, too.
And they had a real racist, Tiki Higgins, as manager for a good part of that stretch.
Oh, he was the worst racist.
Yeah.
He was terrible. Eldon Walker, who was a lovely, lovely man, lived here in Florida, lived to be about 95 years old. I interviewed Eldon about his years on the Red Sox. Cronin was the shortstop at the time.
He's only there 1 year. He's only there.
Well, during that, there's a reason he was only there 1 year, and that was that Cronin was calling the pitches, and it was driving him crazy. And Cronin wouldn't stop, and so Walker said to him, "You've got to trade me off this team. I can't stand playing for you." And so who did he trade him to? He traded him to the St. Louis Browns.
Yeah, that Cronin also. Because Pee Wee Reese was Red Sox property, and
Pee Wee Reese was an interesting story.
Louisville, and Cronin says, "We don't need this kid. I could play a few more years." This is when he was basically at the end of his career. So they sold Reese to the Dodgers. The rest is history.
Right, and Billy Evans, who was the general manager, was pulling his hair out, absolutely pulling his hair out when Yawkey traded him away. It was one of the reasons Evans left the team.
Yeah.
And Yawkey eventually, Cronin became the general manager after he quit as a player. Yawkey loved the guy. Cronin was like Yawkey's son. And it hurt the Red Sox terribly for 20 years.
Yeah.
The story that really, really gets to me, and it was told to me, this had to do with Jackie Robinson. And they were honoring Jackie Robinson when Joe Cronin was the American League president. I think this was 1972. They were honoring Jackie in a ceremony before the game. And Bill White walked over to Cronin and said, "You've got to come out onto the field while we're having the ceremony." And Cronin refused to go. He refused to go out on the field to honor Jackie Robinson.
That's horrendous.
Yep.
Well, do you think?
Well, boys, we've done about 50 minutes today.
There's just one last thing.
Yes.
Does everybody think that Omar Vizquel deserves Hall of Fame?
I deliberated about that for a long time, at least 22 seconds.
Yeah.
and
your decision?
Yes. Absolutely.
Really? Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah, because I'm from Cleveland, I watched him play a lot. He was in his prime, and I have to agree. He really held that infield together in Cleveland. I never saw him play with anybody else, but he would, he had stuff he could do at shortstop that I only saw Lou Boudreau do. But Boudreau Boudreau knew where the pitches were all going. Pascal didn't always know, and he was still there when the ball was hit. He knew where it was going.
I'll tell you, there is nothing on a baseball team like having a talented shortstop.
That's right.
I can tell you from rooting for the Tampa Bay Rays and having a paucity of talented shortstops. we finally got this guy from the Giants, this guy Duffy. And Duffy played a couple of weeks for us, and it was like a brand new team. It was like, holy smokes, we could be a decent team with Duffy at shortstop. Of course, he then had himself a leg operation and didn't play the rest of the season. But he'll be back this season. And I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, 11 Gold Gloves for Vizquel over a 24-year career, and he hit 270. That's
and he had 7 years at the plate. He
contributed the radar for most fans.
All right, he's in. Omar,
we're going to Hoffman, guys.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for participating.
Hoffman, we'll wait till next week on Hoffman.
Wait till next week.
Sounds good. I'm invited back.
Wait till next year, because I'm going to be in Boston. Take care, folks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.